The third annual International Conference on ICT in Teaching and Learning attracted delegates from around the world. They gathered at the Open University of Hong Kong and St. Paul's Convent School to consider the theme of technology-enriched learning spaces. Keynote speakers, paper presenters, and panel discussions address questions of physical versus virtual space, the pedagogies that are most effectively used in learning spaces, the emergence of virtual communities, and the rise of Web 2.0 and its effects on teaching and learning. Today's program features one of the most experienced and illustrious of the conference's keynote speakers, Professor Bibo White from Stanford University in the United States. Professor White was a member of the team that created the first website in the United States at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. He remains a leading thinker, speaker, and visionary in the development of the web and the ways it can be used to facilitate education. Professor White's address focuses on how advanced web technologies are contributing to teaching and learning processes. He assesses developments in Web 2.0 and surveys advanced search techniques, interfaces, and software that have the potential to enhance interactivity with web resources. At each step, he addresses the challenges inherent to harnessing these new technologies and advises on ways of integrating the use of these technologies with traditional forms of teaching and learning.
Technology-enriched learning spaces. What really does that mean? And if, in terms of interpreting what it is, what should be our goal with respect to this particular theme? Okay, technology enriched. I actually think there's sort of a family associated with this concept. So technology E star, that's what I refer to it in this case, where E can mean enriched, enhanced, enabled, etc. And in most of the literature, what you find is that it's kind of a synonym for any kind of educational technology. It's often used as a synonym for e-learning, which could mean any variety of things, everything from remote education to online courses, etc. It can also refer to, and we see in some of the papers that have been presented at this conference, talking about technology-enabled classrooms. Sometimes when you think about technology-enriched education, you think about interactive learning environments. But it's this last definition that really appeals to me. And this is this idea of learning with technology, with cognitive tools in conjunction with technology, as opposed to learning through technology. Because the important thing here is not the technology, it's the content that might be delivered through the technology. And I believe that technology in this sense has now become an inseparable part of the learning and teaching process. And that's really what I want to try to explore today, is some of the technologies that can provide that kind of tool, primarily by means of the web. Then I look for the definition of learning spaces. What do we mean by that? Well, here's a list of some ideas. Everything from the full range of places where learning can occur, from the real space, like in the classrooms, to virtual space, online. From classrooms to chat rooms. All of these particular spaces have potential for education. And it's my belief, too, that students now, with the range of devices that they have, digital devices, can turn almost any space into a learning space. So what kind of learning and teaching should be encouraged or should be facilitated in these spaces? And what kind of infrastructure do we need in order to accommodate and encourage learning in these spaces? It's my belief, too, that education really has two major functions. First of these functions is to transmit the culture, values, and lessons of the past to the current generation. But perhaps more importantly at this stage in time is to say that education is to prepare students for the world in which they're going to live. And I think there's no doubt in anybody's mind right now that the future, the world in which we live and the future itself, is going to be technology enriched and is going to incorporate technology enriched or enabled learning spaces. So once again, there's this idea that our goals of education now have to be consolidated with our view of what the technological future is going to be. So with respect to knowledge too and IT, I believe that what knowledge has done is that IT has enabled us to embrace the complexity of the world rather to avoid it. And we've seen other sort of previous externalizations of knowledge, and they have boundaries. Books have boundaries. Libraries have boundaries. Classrooms have boundaries. But the internet and the web has no boundaries. No physical or virtual boundaries which separate the range of the knowledge that we can get from them. And it's not just the internet and the web containing data. It's not that it just connects ideas or related pieces of information. But now, as we're seeing in the case of the future web, objects are on the web, people are on the web, events are on the web. And so as a result, every person who's on the web is potentially a source of knowledge, is a censor to the rest of the people on the web in terms of providing information and knowledge. So we're all able at the same time to simultaneously know this environment and contribute to this environment. There's been, as a result of this kind of thought, a major paradigm shift, I think, in education from theories of learning to theories of cognition. I think cognition is important. The cognitive approach is important because it recognizes that humans have limitations and that consequently the tools that can be provided can help to compensate for those limitations. And certainly there's no better example of that than Google. It focuses instead on organizing information that fits the needs and fits the capacity. You know, this is what's a problem with Google. Every time we look up something, we certainly find as a result more information than we know how to deal with. How are we able, in fact, to take that vast volume of information and make sense of it? So a lot of this has also changed the focus, I believe, in education, not from just learning, because data or access to data is no longer just the issue, but to thinking and organization. And I think this is very similar to this familiar concept, I know to many of you, of constructivism, because it basically views or thinks that the learning process should simply be a reconstruction of knowledge. Seymour Papert, the inventor of logo, who's made some great contributions in terms of computer education, believes that learning is more effective certainly when the learner is able to construct with the data that they have or the concepts that they have a meaningful product.